Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the full council meeting tonight, Wednesday, 13th of May, 2026, at 1900 hours. We'll start off with public participation session. I can see we've got some members of the public here tonight. Have we got anybody online, Aaron?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just admitting a couple of people. We've got colleague Henry's online, and I think Paul from the the paper, not from the paper, is he? Yeah, Local Democracy Reporter is also online. So yeah,
that's fine. So, in accordance with standing orders, the public have up to 15 minutes in total to speak, and as there's a few here tonight, let's say an average of about 3 minutes each. So, who wishes to start off first? If you'd like to speak first, if they go to a microphone and speak through it, either there or there, that'll be brilliant.
Hello, myself, my fellow trustee, just wanted to come and speak about the item about Plasfinnan Park and Millennium Green. And just in case anyone hasn't had a chance to read the letter, which I know you've got a busy agenda, so maybe not everyone has read the whole thing. It's just very quickly the history. 1998, a group of people tried to keep that park from being built on by houses because it has got permission to build houses. Quite surprised about that because one half is very, very soggy. And these people have been working really hard for the last 28 years now, and they've now gradually dropped off by, either dying or moving out of the area, becoming very ill and infirm. So they've had occasional new people join, but they've just basically struggled. It was down to 2 people. So 3 of us agreed to take over as trustees just to try and help sort it out, really, because they've had a considerable amount of money 26 years ago and did lots of work. They've had some small grants since then, but it seems very hard to get new grants for new stuff, for sort of continuing rather than new things. And as you can imagine, there are 2 ponds there which have decking, which has been there now for 25 years and is reaching the end of its life. So whereas we could do the odd fundraising event and do things like that to plant a border or look after a tree, those big things now need to be resorted out. So the reason we put it on the agenda, we think it would be good. Oswestry Borough Council helped in the past before it, and then sort of some things were transferred to Shropshire. Sorry, left. I'll leave Sarah to say something, but we're really looking for you to agree to, consider it and perhaps get together with us so we can go through numbers. Didn't really want to come in here flooding with numbers and costs and all this kind of thing.
Okay, so yeah, we've got 2 major projects on the Millennium Green with the ponds. We've reached out to DPay if you're going to help us, and we've got volunteers. We've got the green team are helping with doing some of the maintenance there, but it is that we've still got some really big projects that we can't fund ourselves. So that's the letter is asking for some help with that. We 3 are trustees, but it's a big job to keep it safe and to keep it as a public space going forward into the future. Okay.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to speak next?
Okay. My name is Ian Campbell, Maysby and Aston Ward. I'd like to say thank you to everyone that allowed us to listen to Wednesday's presentation. It is now. So I'd just like to say thank you for that. During that, I asked about money, okay, and how much profit there is within building 300 plus houses. They didn't want to tell me, and so I looked it up, and it can be anything from 25 to 35 million pounds profit, possibly even more depending on postcode areas. So with that in mind, the reason I want to talk to you is briefly because Persimmon Homes in Shropshire Star are building 220 odd houses 106 section funding, and it adds up to about £2.2 million, including SIL. Okay, so there's about £540,000 in SIL and 1.7 million in other funding to education, etc., under the section 106. Now, my point is, Oswestry is growing by 20%. There's 2,000 houses roughly going up. If you look at this 335 houses, that's potentially £2.5 to £3 million that you possibly could be negotiating for. Now, with funding, money, the fact that you're looking to take on other responsibilities such as grass cutting, all that sort of stuff, and the fact that the mayor's just made a speech about wanting to improve links and communication links and transport links, the amount of money that 2,000 houses, if you start to become, or if one started to become more aggressive, you potentially can negotiate millions of pounds that could then become something that would really benefit and enable things like perhaps the train running into Oswestry, or at least started to get it to Gabowen Station for people coming off, to the orthopaedic. Yeah, there are all sorts of projects with that amount of money, and I think it would be really important for everyone to start to become far more sort of aware of the kind of numbers that these builders are dealing with, and how 10%, looking at those figures, seems to be a reasonable percentage for 106s to be discussed.
Sorry to interrupt, sir.
Yeah.
Just before we allow you to go further, can I just check if there's anyone else here or online who wishes to speak, given the time we've got left? And then, if not, then I'll let you carry on. Just yourself. Is there anyone online?
I don't think there's anybody online who wishes to speak, but they can make themselves known to me now if they do.
No. Okay, carry on.
All right. So my point is, with that background, there's millions of pounds.
Oh, I think your microphone needs to go back on.
There. There is potentially millions of pounds that you could be in the market for the benefit of Oswestry and its surrounding local rural parishes. And I think that's something that needs to be marked. Okay? That's really all I want to say. There's a lot of money out there, guys. And understand they don't want to tell you about it because that's their profits. So get into them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Martin Jones, current chairman of Oswestry Rural Parish Council. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for the opportunity afforded us to join the Teams meeting recently. I hope we didn't disappoint in our questions that we put forward for you and for ourselves. But again, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity. A couple of things. One, I picked up very briefly on the corporate plan, which is just a wording issue that I've been chastised for by Aaron already, so don't worry about picking me up. But it's about residents demanding more, and I understand completely with what Aaron's saying. However, my personal view is population growth is not residents asking for more, but that's semantics, mere semantics. Just to prove that I have read your agenda. The new town mayor, in his speech the other night, said that he wants to improve ties with other Shropshire towns, according to his speech the other night as it was reported. For us personally, the town should be more concerned with the surrounding villages and parishes that will support Oswestry, its shops and businesses going forward, and helping the town achieve its ambitions to improve, grow, and to bring more back to the street scene. That, we feel, should be its first priority in establishing links, especially given the likes of St Martin's has a population already of 5,000 and is expanding, notwithstanding Gabowen, Whittington, and the other surrounding villages that are expanding massively. We should be looking to improve links with these villages, particularly as the demand on our services gets bigger, highlighting the issue that Ian has said with regard to getting funding and more monies from developers. We need to be looking at services, schools, and improving infrastructure as we discussed on the Teams meeting. Thank you ever so much. You'll be pleased to know that I have two very sore children at home, one of which was knocked over by a car deliberately the other week. So we won't be staying, I'm afraid.
I did say sorry.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very
We do
much.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Sorry to disturb your evening.
Thank you. One last chance, if there's anyone else here or online who wishes to speak before we draw the public participation to a close. No? Okay, that is the end of public participation and to the order of business. You're welcome to stay, but, you know. Item 2A, apologies for absence, Aaron.
Mr Mayor, we have apologies for absence from Councillors Wilson, McKinney, Roberts, Froggatt, Moore, Brindley.
Good lad. And those are all. Okay, I move we accept those apologies. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Johnson. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 2B, disclosure of councillors' interests. I will move to my left. Councillor Owen.
I disclose an interest on items relating to Shropshire Council services, but I have been granted a dispensation to discuss them.
Thank you. Microphone.
Exactly the same as James. I have been granted dispensation, and anything I discuss today won't have any impact on anything further.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Shropshire Council Planning Portfolio Holder, I'll just throw that in because we got SIL on the agenda. I've also got a financial interest in terms of motion 19B, so I'll leave the room for that because it's talking about topographical surveys, and that's part of what I do for a living. And I do have a self-employed business, so I'll go out for that. But just a general interest in terms of anything to do with the transfer of services, and I've got the dispensation for that fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you didn't say my name, Councillor Borman.
Councillor Borman.
For those listening online, I have a dispensation until the 31st of May as a Shropshire Councillor on matters around the transfer of services from Shropshire Council to towns and parishes.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to get boring, this isn't it? I also have a dispensation to talk on matters of shared services because I'm a Shropshire councillor. I'm also a trustee of two Plasfinnan charities, so I will leave the room for item 18.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Councillor Mark Owen. As per the others, I have dispensation to speak on the transfer of services as a Shropshire councillor. However, there's two extra things to provide interest. I'm also a member of the Northern Planning Committee on Shropshire Council, but any things I say today won't have any bearing on what happens actually in that committee meeting on Shropshire, and because obviously there could well be extra information which would have a bearing on what I actually decide. So whatever I say today in that, I will not, it will not stop me from making a decision. Also, I'll mention this, it's tenuous and probably isn't, but for the sake of clarity, I'm also, item 12 about the policy on the licensing of hackney carriages. I'm also a member of the Strategic Licensing Committee on Shropshire Council. However, that tends to be more specific to actually applications rather than the policy. So I really don't feel the need to actually see the overlap in that case, unless somebody can advise me otherwise.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Councillor Wendy Owen.
Yes, I too am on the Shropshire Council, so I've been given dispensation to discuss items relating to Shropshire Council services and transfer of them. And on item 24, I'm also declaring an interest, a conflict of interest in this item, so I'll be leaving the room for that matter.
Thank you very much. None from myself. Item 3, minutes of the previous meetings, 4th of March, 11th of March, 25th of March. Unless anyone has anything to add, I propose we adopt en bloc. Seconded by Councillor Mark Owen. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Of course, yes. Thank you indeed. Item 4, update from the Mayor. Nothing really to update other than this is my first meeting here with you all today, and it's so good to have you all. Let's see what we can do. Item 5, standing committees. To adopt the attached minutes of planning committees held on the 6th of August 2025, 17th of December 2025 and 18th of February 2026. Likewise, unless there's anything anyone wishes to add, I propose we move on block. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Mark Owen. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 6A, to note the minutes of a meeting held on the 15th of January 2026 of the Future Oswestry Group. Does anyone wish to add anything? Aaron?
No, there's no recommendations there. It's just to receive the notes of that meeting and just have an overview of the work that group is doing.
Thank you. Does anyone from the floor wish to add anything? No. In that case, I move we adopt. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor James Owen. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 6B, Neighbourhood Plan, Councillor-led working group, to note the minutes. Aaron?
So thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a brief update from me. I think it's positive first steps in terms of the establishment of a neighbourhood plan for Oswestry. I think the group are starting to get to grips with the extent of the work that's required. There aren't any recommendations in there. However, there will be a public meeting held sometime in June, and it would be good to get representation from the council at that meeting. Be further information at a later date.
Thank you very much. I'll go to the floor. No. I move we adopt. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor James Owen. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 6C, Kyglass Park and Cemetery Management Group, to note the minutes of the meeting, and there are also some recommendations, I believe. So, Aaron?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for noting the recommendations, because there are two significant ones that the Kyglass Park and Cemetery Management Group have made. So these are around the resurfacing of the tennis court, which I think has been discussed by council. I would just highlight that no, there isn't a budget identified for that. The minutes reference a use of capital receipts. I have to say, as it's a repair and maintenance task, I think that the money would have to be found from the emergency repair reserves as opposed to capital, if members are mindful to support that recommendation. And the second recommendation there is to appoint a landscape architect, a budget of £25,000 to consider the layout and plans for Kyglass Park. And again, just need to highlight that there isn't you didn't budget for that expenditure as part of the budget process. So you need to perhaps consider where that money would come from and how we would carry that out, or perhaps ask for a further report in more detail. But I'll leave those for you. So two big recommendations there, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Who wishes to speak first? Councillor James Owen.
I would obviously prefer that the money didn't. Well, I have a question of how much is in the emergency repairs budget if you were going to make a decision to use that. Is it sufficient to cover the cost that was proposed?
The answer is yes. There is sufficient money in reserves, and I think in emergency reserves, because it's more than just the £25,000. But it isn't. I think it's not can't be classed as capital expenditure. Because it's a resurfacing and maintenance. So, yeah.
I'll go to Councillor Simmons and then yourself.
Well, I agree with Aaron here.
whenever I prepare a set of accounts, if it's resurfacing or repairs like this, it would go to repairs, it would not come out of capital.
Councillor Owen?
I'm just cautious to not use money that we haven't budgeted for in emergency repairs unless we've been advised it is an emergency to repair this. It would be whether we move this into the next budget and have that as something to go into it specifically that we can then consult on and make sure that residents do want to go ahead.
So it has been identified as an emergency repair. So, you know, it's been considered by the management group. They do think there's faults, and I think under health and safety you probably need to commit to doing it. There is a Carglass Park repairs and maintenance budget as well, of, and I haven't got the figure, but it's in the region of £15,000, I think, which you know would go towards it as well. So yeah, I don't feel you've got a choice but doing the work, if I'm honest. But I'll leave that with you.
Councillor Kerr, then Councillor Mark Owen.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we actually do the work. We've heard there's an emergency repair. We have an emergency repair budget. That's what it's for. So I'd like to move that we actually proceed with the work to the tennis court. I think on the 25 round, which sounds quite a lot of money for a landscape architect, I'm not prepared. Well, I'd like to know more information on that. So I'm moving on the tennis court and I'm perhaps deferring on the landscape architect.
Councillor Mark Owen.
Councillor Kerr has just clarified one of the things I was going to ask. This motion is actually for just the repair, yes? And I'm happy to support that because it does need to be done, hence emergency. The landscape architect, it's important, however, it's not in this year's budget, so I would prefer to get more report and defer it, possibly going into next year's budget, since we know in advance that it's something we might like to do.
So the proposal here is to, in addition to adopting and a note in the minutes, it is to recommend proceeding with the surfacing of the tennis court, but deferring the landscape architect until we can get further information. That is what you said. I'm for the purposes of the minutes, you are proposing it, Councillor Kerr, and Councillor Mark Owen is seconding it.
I'm happy to second it, yes.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I will ask one last time, does anyone wish to add anything before we go to the vote? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only question really is there's still headroom in the repairs budget if anything else comes along. But from what you said, that sounds...
I know where it is on the dashboard, so we'll get it to give you confirmation.
Yeah, with that reassurance.
We will just pause the meeting until Aaron returns. Yes, sum up.
Just in terms of that, though, it will need replenishing in the repairs fund at some point, so that's going to end up coming back in the budget in a year's time anyway. So.
Thank you. Councillor Elmott?
Sorry.
Microphone.
Press it again. I pressed.
Oh. In terms of landscaping and the bigger project, would it not be appropriate to be asking our potentially new green spaces, open spaces manager to consider it as part of the work that he's looking at?
I mean, it's subject to the report that we're asking to defer. It could very well be themselves. I mean, Councillor Wendy Owen.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I didn't have the figure of what was the figure for the repair. I had the amount for the consultation. That's all.
You've seen the answer. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, like 21-minute 5Ks are days behind me, I think, aren't they? Yeah. So the Global Repairs and Maintenance Reserve, which is there to fund essential repairs and maintenance work across the council's extensive property portfolio, is 170,000.
Okay. If there's no one else that wishes to speak, I will go back to Councillor Kerr to sum up.
Yeah, I think
Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think as it's been made, that's what you would budget for emergency repairs, and it seems a perfectly appropriate use for it. It's a small part of it. Ultimately, we do have a reserve contingency that's not allocated, so if anything catastrophic happened, we could go to that as well. But you're right, they've got to be made up in future years, but that is what they're there for. And in terms of the landscape architect, I did think if we're taking on other pieces of land, we're probably going to need to have a clear strategy and a vision for what's going to happen to those pieces of land as well. So it might make sense to do that all in one rather than do that in penny pieces. So that's why I think it's supporting the comments made, best to defer that element.
Thank you very much. So, all those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item 6D, Lewid Mansion Steering Group, to note the minutes of the meeting Appendix B. Aaron.
So, just a brief update, because this is a key project, and there's a very important meeting being held with the National Lottery on Tuesday, where they're actually considering whether to allow us to go forward with our application in August. So I'm very grateful for the support of members on that group. It's a key meeting, and there's a lot of work gone into it. But just in terms of how this influences future work for this council, in June you'll be asked to consider and approve the planning application for the development of Llwyd Mansion and the listed building consent as part of the package. And in July you'll be asked to consider the business case prior to its submission to the National Lottery in August. So the deadline after that is the lottery then take several months to consider the application, with a decision sometime in January, February, March. So there's a little bit of a hiatus there for us. Hopefully we'll get the go-ahead to do it, and work will be starting in earnest in 2027.
Thank you, Aaron. Before I go to the floor, did I see Councillor Johnson put her hand up? Very good. Councillor Elmet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to support everything Aaron said there. I think the committee's been very supportive, worked extremely well together, and I am genuinely optimistic that the meeting next week will be a positive one.
Thank you very much. Who else wishes to add anything? No. So in that case, I move we note the minutes and any recommendations within it. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? Adopted. Thank you. Item 6E, Shropshire Services Working Group, to note the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of March 2026. Aaron?
Nothing to add. I think as a report, and probably the key report for you to consider this evening on the next steps, both there is an item on the main agenda, and one then again following the exclusion of the public and press. Those are very important decisions that you're faced with tonight to take us forward. Again, grateful to the work of the Shropshire Council Services Working Group, but also to colleagues at Shropshire Council as well, who have been who've supported that work. So, yeah, no recommendations, but important decision, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Aaron. I'll go to the floor. Does anyone wish to add anything? No. In that case, I move we note the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by by both Councillors Johnson and Mark Owen. So, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 6F, please.
Yeah, that's covered in the report. So this is to do with the transfer of the lease to the town council and the cost incurred to the Fields and Trust and the QE2 status. So it is covered elsewhere. But
we are approving that expenditure at some point in the agenda tonight, later on. Okay.
Thank you. And councillors are just reminded that unless it's to raise a point of order or within the standing orders, please raise the hand when speaking out. Thank you very much. Item 6F, Police Partnership Panel, to note the minutes of a meeting held on the 30th of March 2026. Who wishes to add anything? No. In that case, I move we adopt. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor James Owen. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 7, to answer any questions in accordance with standing orders.
None, Mr. Mayor. And in future, I'll let you know that there aren't any. need to bring me in future, so we'll cover that one off.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Item 8, to transact all such business. Item 8A, appointment of a committee to appoint the planning committee hyphen all members. Who wishes? Councillor James Owen.
More urgent business first, and then we can go through the sort of procedural stuff later.
Just to clarify, Councillor James Owen, you're wishing to move it to which part of the end? Just before exclusion or
Prior to exclusion.
prior to exclusion? Okay. Is council mindful to move to prior to exclusion?
Let's talk about that. It's a bit of a risk that we don't get to it, and it's obviously fairly important that we do elect our committees, even if some other items can be left. Clearly, we can't proceed beyond the annual meeting if we don't elect to our committees and appoint to our committees. So I'm just trying to understand whether it's sensible to delay it to that late, given the time limits and the length of the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Ellis? Well, given time is short, I'm just going to proceed to the vote. Who wishes to move to the end? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Carried. So we're moving item 8 to just after item 22. Thank you. And that's the whole of item 8. Okay, item 9, corporate plan 2026 to 2030. To consider the corporate plan 26 to 2030, setting out the council's priorities for that period. It should be a guide to decision making and the allocation of resources. Who wishes to start off? Oh yes, Sarah. Yes.
No, I appreciate that. So this is owned by the council, so it doesn't need me to say a great deal. But what I just talk about how it's been pulled together, because what it is a summary of what has been agreed to date. So it's the things, the notices and motions that you put forward, the proposals that you put forward at the budget setting, together with our ongoing projects and pieces of work. So it sets out an ambitious programme. It's been backed up by budget. I think it shows the extent of Oswestry Town Council's work and will stretch our capacity to deliver and grow. The corporate terms for this, they always say it's not set in stone, it shouldn't sit on a shelf, and it is a live document, but all those are true. It will be further added to because, as you agree, new projects and priorities, you need to do so in line with a corporate plan because that's your direction of travel, and there will need to be a feature in those as part of the action plan. So, yeah, I'd obviously recommend this to you to adopt.
Thank you. Who wishes to start? Councillor James Owen.
I just want to start by thanking Aaron and all the officers for compiling a very good document that does outline what I think us and the public have come to being the direction of travel over the next 4 years. I think it is quite ambitious, and I think that's what we have to be as a town council at this time, given the issues facing local government across the country. And I look forward to getting as much of this proceeded through by 2030 as possible.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Rosie Radford.
I just want to echo what James said and thank you for compiling this document. When I arrived in the council 9 years ago or something, there was a very dusty plan on a bookshelf somewhere that hadn't been updated in a very long time, that really didn't reflect what Oswestry needed and wanted and what councillors thought about, whereas this is modern and up to date and representative, and it's really positive. And for anybody, in terms of transparency, and for any new members of staff and for any members of the public that want to see it as well, I think it's a really good opportunity to show what we do and what we have done and what we want to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Who else wishes to add anything? So am I taking that as a proposal and
I'm happy to propose.
And you're happy to second? Okay then. All those in favour? Adopted. Thank you very much. Item 10, policies. 10A, the Council's governing documents. Item 10AI, standing orders. To consider Appendix E, standing orders. Councillor Marcoe.
If I could make a suggestion. It makes more sense to have item A actually after the moved item 8, because once you've got your committees, then talking about the standing orders and especially the delegation makes more sense to come after it.
Okay.
So I would suggest that we move 10A after item 8 and then carry on with 10B, which obviously is independent.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep things rational, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Do you have a seconder for that proposal, Councillor Marcoe? Perhaps you're seconding it. Councillor Kerr?
I understand this. So standing orders are separate from appointments to committees. So I don't understand why it needs to follow on afterwards. It's a separate, but a scheme of delegation is a scheme of delegation mainly to officers, so I don't see how that affects it either. So I'll vote against it. I don't understand what's going on.
Councillor James Owen, yes, you may.
Any appointment to committees could have an effect on the standing orders if you need, or there's a suggestion which you want to amend the standing orders. Again, it's procedural, and I feel getting to the items that are further closer is a sort of more use of our time while we're sort of more awake, and procedural is later on in the thing. Scheme of delegation does include all of the terms of reference of every committee, and therefore, if there are any new or amended committees, the scheme of delegation would need to change to reflect that.
Okay, does anyone else wish to add anything before we go to the vote? Councillor Walker?
It's just a question on procedure, really, because I thought the chair of the meetings, the chair's discretion about moving things up and down, you don't have to have a vote from us to approve it.
That's how I do things. I'm using my discretion
my
to have a vote.
understanding, but I'm happy to be correct.
That's my style. So, all those in favour of moving to the end? Against? And one abstention from myself. So item 10A is moved to after item 8, so we'll now move on to item 10B, new policies, whistleblowing policy, to consider Appendix G.
So nothing more. Good practice to have a whistleblowing policy. Council hasn't necessarily had one. It's covered all other policies, but a little bit of a gap. Been developed using best practice from LGA and the Society of Local Council Clerks. No big issues in there. Obviously, we'll go on our website when it's if you approve it.
Okay. Who wishes to add anything? Without any comment, Councillor Walker?
I'm happy to propose it, but I just welcome it because it's definitely something we need to have covered.
Thank you. On that note, so proposed, seconded, all those in favour? Adopted, thank you. Item 10C, review of policies, risk management strategy, to review and consider Appendix H.
So similarly, good practice to regularly review risk management strategy, and it does form part of our annual audit. There are no changes from the previously adopted risk management strategy, so there's no real issues for you to consider. Council has passed the audit, if that's the right expression, last year, and it's because we have a risk management strategy and we deliver against it. So I'd ask you to support it.
Okay, who wishes to add anything? Councillor Walker?
Only to propose we adopt it.
Thank you.
It's
Do you have a second?
good practice. I would say the risk chart, you can divvy that up however you like almost, because some have got 10 square by 10, and yeah, so it doesn't matter as long as we've got it in there and it's in place. That's all I'm bothered with.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 11, SIL Neighbourhood Fund 2026 update from Shropshire Council, to note the confirmation from Shropshire Council.
So, Mr. Mayor, we get a letter from Shropshire Council, probably late March, early April, just setting out the SIL Neighbourhood Fund payment that the council will receive in the next financial year. Just asking that you note it. I think you have said in your budget strategies that you're going to use this money to invest in play facilities. So, however, it is at your discretion to use. It is for capital funding, and has to be done by decision, has to be recorded appropriately and reported accordingly as well. There's the sum. Not sure if we've had it yet, but yeah, bring forward further reports and how we wish to spend it.
Thank you very much. Who wishes to add anything? Councillor Walker?
Only to move to note it, but I would comment as the portfolio holder who's got still that that amount won't include everything in the year because some of it is dragging over the year end. And I would say in terms of the public question, that wasn't necessarily factually correct what was said. But I'm not going to split hairs over it, but he's right in what he said. You can get contributions from the developer, but you can get stuff over and above what's developer contributions in terms of community benefit, and that's the thing that we lobby for. We don't lobby for the SIL and the 106 agreement because that's agreed by Shropshire Council officers. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Owen?
Could I just ask a question? I apologise if it's, I should know this. Is there a time limit on spending SIL? Is there any?
No, it's sorry, my fault. So it's paid across to the town council. I think there is the pressure comes from the public expectation is that you've received the money and it is there. I think the expression is to ameliorate.
In theory, it's 5 years, but Shropshire Council have said they're not going to go to anybody to draw it back.
Anyone else? I think there's only a recommendation to note.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I move we note. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Noted. Thank you. Item 12A, public consultation on police force mergers. To note the letter from the Police and Crime Commissioner as Appendix I on consultation to seek the views of Herefordshire, Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin and Worcestershire residents. Who wishes to start off? Councillor James Owen?
I feel like individual councillors, it's sort of more worth in having their own input to the consultation, but I just want to put on record the sort of, I feel West Mercia is always already a very large area for police force to be acting over, and the possibility of that area being expanded further and resources being pulled away even further towards more urban areas is something that we should actively fight against. We already see the issues that we have with government taking funding away. We don't need our services taken away as well.
Thank you. Councillor Walker?
You know, we've seen this trajectory before with the fire authorities and the ambulance service, and we end up with a worse service locally because it's all controlled in a bigger urban area and the priorities are all different and skewed against us. So it's not something I'd support, but yeah, I'd say we just all respond individually, but it doesn't hurt if we send a corporate thing in.
So it's moved and seconded that to fill in this and to perhaps ask that a letter be written in order for some correspondence. Councillor Kerr?
Yeah, I was just confused as to whether councillors are proposing that we respond individually or whether the town council responds in accordance with what you said. Actually, I support what you said, but I think that should come from the town council as a democratically elected body for the town. Individuals can add to it, but I think it should come from the town council.
Councillor?
Yeah, sorry, I was just unclear that I feel like we should also, as individuals, input to this consultation. However, I was then making a point of how I feel the corporate should then respond.
So a point of clarity is we do both?
If one wishes, yeah.
Right.
So there's a corporate response. So the town council response, just for clarity, are you objecting to it or are you expressing your concerns? So just need to decide that one. And what are your concerns, just to help me pull that together.
Councillor Kerr?
We are objecting on the concerns that Councillor Owen set out very clearly, which is we are concerned about larger areas would result in urban areas. more services than rural areas, and as a rural area, we've noticed that trend in other service providers, and we wish to avoid it in the police. We work very closely with the police. We think the existing arrangement is as good as it can be, and we do not think it needs changing.
Thank you. I did see Councillor Owen put his hand up and then put it down, so I'll go to Councillor Owen, then to Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The point was made, and I won't take up your time any further.
Thank you. Councillor Radford.
I think I would just want to add my concerns over a move away from neighbourhood policing that is specific and knowledgeable about smaller neighbourhood areas rather than larger policing areas. Given the white paper that we had 3 or 4 months ago, this seems to contravene that prioritisation of neighbourhood policing. Yes.
Thank you. Anything further? So it's been moved by Councillor Walker and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Councillor Kerr, seconded by everyone, to individually write in to respond and to voice the notes. Aaron. Sorry, I'll go to Aaron and then to you, Councillor. All right.
Just to clarify, we can't tell people to individually write. We can invite them to. What we can do is say the town council will respond, and I think that's all we ought to do. Obviously, people can if they want to individually write, but that's up to them. We can't tell them to do that.
Okay. Good. All those in before we go to the vote, one more.
No, well, it's right. You can't mandate people to do it, but we should be encouraging everybody to do it, not just us, because the more people who object to it and comment on it, the more it's going to have an impact.
Thank you very much. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 12B, Shropshire Council consultation, proposed Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy 2027 to 2031. To note the comments, to note that comments are sought on the proposed policy. The consultation commenced 6th of April 2026 and will run for a period of 12 weeks until midnight on the 28th of June 2026. Well, Councillor.
I'm going to do a lot of talking tonight. I think there's a well-known sort of issue of Oswestry and wider Shropshire that taxi drivers generally have issues with the current policy, I feel, and as many of the residents are of Oswestry, and residents of Oswestry don't often are able to get taxis at certain times of the day, quite often because of the sort of limited number of them, and I feel like the policy could and has been suggested to be one of the factors behind that, and therefore I think a comment that we should make is to ensure that taxi drivers are actually included and listened to make sure that this policy works for them, rather than just be a corporate sort of stamp that works to raise money for Shropshire Council.
Thank you. Is that a proposal? Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Johnson. Moved, seconded. One more ask. Can you clarify?
That we comment to hope that taxi drivers are brought along with this process rather than having the policy enforced on them, and their comments that have been made clear to elected representatives over the last many years are included to see whether this policy can be adjusted to make it more accessible.
Councillor Kerr?
I don't know if James is on the council at the time, may not have been, but several years ago, I'm looking at Aaron, 4 or 5 years ago, we did quite a lot of work in this arena because we had taxi drivers raising this concern with us. We had the strategic licensing team here. We went through it in some detail. I have to say, it's the pressure between making sure that vehicles meet emission standards and are accessible, and in particular the accessibility and the difficulty about that. So we had a lot of complaints that there was a bureaucracy and a delay at Shropshire Council. I have to say, when we investigated that, we didn't find that to be the case. And I think at the end of the day, the taxi drivers seemed to accept that this was, yeah, it's a difficult system because people can get registered in Wolverhampton famously and everywhere else. So there's that element which is causing a lot of confusion, but we can't change that. That's a sort of national system that councils can license taxi drivers across the country, it seems. So I think if we're going to say anything specific to Shropshire Council about the policy, we're going to have to be very specific as exactly what bit of it needs changing, because we've looked at the totality of it, realised the legal constraints on them and the, you know, the requirements they have, and at that time couldn't see much further more that could be done. The reality in Oswestry just seemed to be economic choices. The taxi drivers obviously have a lot of send kids nowadays to take to schools. That's dependable, profitable. I'm not saying it's over profitable, but it's dependable work, and they're just not so interested in taking people to the station and late night visitors. And it's hard to see how you could change that dynamic.
Councillor Mark Owen, then Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I took this proposal as merely suggesting that taxi drivers be encouraged to input into the policy rather than it just being a corporate thing. I don't know if that's correct or not. If that's the case, then all we're doing is encouraging people to respond to the consultation. So I have no problem with actually supporting that.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, it's the same thing, really. We need to encourage as many people to take part in the consultation as possible, because as we've heard about surrounding parishes, it's a two-way journey, and it's people coming in and going out, as well as us, anybody from here going out at all times of day and night. So it's the choice isn't as good as it used to be. So if we can end up with a better service provision for everybody, then that'll be a good thing.
Just to be clear, because my job is then to deliver something. So, and what you're saying is that you want more people to take part in the consultation, less their voice, but there's no action for officers to undertake, because it's not within my gift to make that happen. So, are you just do you want me to write to Shropshire Council and make sure that they're doing that, or what's the resolution, or are we just saying it's important? Okay. So that's to the local democracy reporter. Stick your thumb up, Paul. No, he's gone.
So the resolution is basically to note and encourage as many people as we can to write in and voice their concerns. Okay, so that's been moved by yourself. Seconded. Okay, all those in favour? Adopted. Thank you.
Paul's put his thumb up. That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Item 13, Neighbourhood Governance Pack. To consider the SALC Neighbourhood Governance Pack as Appendix J. So there's a resolution within to adopt a motion further.
Yeah, so I'm actually grateful to Councillor Radford for highlighting this, because I must admit, in the plethora of, and you get the NALC and SALC updates, I'd actually lost this in those updates as well. But essentially, there are some concerns that the role of parish council will be diminished by the introduction of this bill, and some concerns that parish councils won't be the go-to place for partners to work with. Now, not all councillors are as active as you, or work in partnership as well as you do, and communities have the right to be properly represented as well. So the only question in here is, do you want to, poorly expressed, I do apologise, do you wish to pass a motion as outlined, or do you want to wait for a further information and understand the full context behind the bill before doing so?
Okay. Councillor Kerr?
I don't feel I have a strong feeling, but I'd be minded to wait a bit. I always think it's unfortunate when any change is suggested, those who are currently part of the status quo jump up and down and say, we're wonderful, we can't possibly be changed. I mean, parish councils have been around for an awful long time, but I'd be the last person to say, maybe it's time to look again. We haven't got parish councils in urban areas, in city areas. Maybe a new governance structure could be evolved there. So personally, I don't feel strongly about oppose the motion, but I'd probably wait a little bit further to actually see what the proposals are, rather than jump into the gun to say we must keep parish councils in their current form, because that may not be the best option for the people.
Councillor Mark Owen?
Yeah, I can see the logic in waiting. However, having read this, I got somewhat confused because the proposal from this bill is to add another level, right down at the neighbourhood level, is it? To actually represent the neighbourhoods. And yet they said, as part of that, that the reason they do that is because people get confused between different layers of government. So it's contradictory, isn't it? You add an extra layer of government, in effect, and therefore increase confusion even more. So I find that somewhat baffling, if I've interpreted it correctly. In which case I'd wait, certainly, but I'm just wondering whether a letter to our MP highlighting our concern about the possibilities, and then see what happens in terms of how it progresses. I think we do need to at least indicate that we've seen it, and we realise that things may not stay as they are. However, to actually duplicate effectively what the parish level does and just call it something else, I find a little bit peculiar.
Councillor Walker?
I think it's another one of those urban policies that's come out, and they don't understand what town and parishes actually do on the ground, because in a lot of urban areas they're not even parished. Kidderminster didn't have a parish council for donkey's years. I can understand it where you've got that lack of something to put something in. And, so I agree, it's better to wait, keep a powder dry by and large, but there's no harm in expressing our concern to the MP. But in terms of us deciding anything, I wouldn't want to debate it all, decide something now and then have to do it all over again because someone else has come out with another ground.
So if it's okay then, so I think I would be minded to raise it with the MP based on the feedback from the past, whether they're aware. Who's pressing it?
That was me, sorry.
Yep. Stop it.
So just raise it as a note with the MP point to say, you know, can you keep an eye on this? There are some concerns locally. We are open to understanding what this means, but there shouldn't be duplication because there's enough confusion at a local level already without adding any more.
Councillor Kurt, then Councillor Radford.
I think the 2 points made have been made very well. This is an urban paper, but it's thinking in urban terms. And I think the point you have to Helen Morgan would be that in rural areas, parish councils are the neighbourhood council. You don't need anything else. But I understand, I think the biggest parish council is Northampton. I think Northampton's got a population of about 150,000. So I could all understand in Northampton you might want to talk about something at a more neighbourhood level, i.e. at a lower level, but it doesn't make sense in most rural areas.
Councillor Radford, then Councillor Borroman.
I think it sounds slightly contradictory, but what I'm going to say is I think it is worth just highlighting that we do value, as Town Council, the purpose of a local democratic setup at a town level. And leave it that almost, because it's not about denying anything else necessarily at this stage, but it is about acknowledging that we value and we think our residents value what we do as a town council.
Thank you. Councillor Borroman.
I had a suspicion I'd seen something already. I think we locked the stable door after the horses bolted because it got royal assent on the 29th of April. Yeah.
But is that just a bill?
No, it's an act. It has now received royal assent. It's not a bill anymore. You know, it stops being a bill when it gets royal assent.
Through the chair, please.
Question to Councillor Borroman is, does it tell you whether there's like
your listening ears,
an enabling act where there'd be lots of regulations then coming out and we can still influence those? I suspect that's what it is. I don't expect the act defines rural and urban areas. But
Okay, so there's a resolution to write to our MP to seek advice from Parliament as to further clarification around this proposal and how it, where it places us as a level of community governance?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if councillors are happy with me to give me delegated authority to write to the MP with building on the points that you made with some additional research, I'll do so. And I appreciate the comment, which is important, that Councillor Radford made, because it is about pointing out that the Town Council do a key role in the town. So I think that's an important one to note as well. So if that's okay, I'll progress with that action.
Moved, seconded, all those in favour? Carried, thank you very much. Item 14, report from the Town Clerk on Shropshire Council Services to consider report TC/4416/26.
So as I highlighted earlier, Mr. Mayor, this is a key report and some key decisions on there. I've kept the report fairly simple, very direct in terms of the recommendations. I think there are 3 key recommendations that you need to make. One is agreeing the asset list. The second is considering the contribution of £5,000. And finally, just for clarity, the third recommendation on here was around Oak Street Car Park, but you've all seen the updates from me on that, haven't you? So I think that's good news that the Town Council will be responsible for managing Oak Street Car Park from some point in 2029. Helps you to deliver some of your plans around improving parking provision in the town and permits and what have you. So yeah, just grateful. I think members who sit on the working group will say it's a good working group. Well, I hope you will do. It works well. A value contribution. It's well considered and runs quite quickly as well, which is always a good thing. Yeah, very grateful support, very clear recommendations, and I look forward to receiving your instructions.
Councillor Mark Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The points, the recommendations are important, and I would certainly support the first 2, since the third one has almost become moot. The fact that we have to pay for the fees associated with that, with transfer, we've got a place in the budget where we can do that, and I think that I would be supporting actually allowing that to happen so that Aaron can proceed with it. The Oak Street bit, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just adding that it is important that we proceed separately with Oak Street, but I wouldn't want us in the future to tie it to the green spaces, so that if Oak Street does take a little bit longer, I wouldn't want it to negate what we're trying to do. Also, the clerk knows my frustration on the fact that it takes so long. It's not anyone's fault here locally. It's the whole process which takes its time. But I would like to think that I would suggest that the clerk actually has the ability to progress some things quicker than others, even if the heads of term haven't been signed. And I'm referring to what's happened over the last few weeks with litter bins and poo bins. I'm just wondering if we can actually take on, where necessary, the bins on these green spaces to try and make sure that things are kept tidy as we are heading for the actual proper control, as it were. So I've said my piece already to the clerk. He's aware of it. But I thought I'd say it tonight as well, that if we can move things forward a little bit quicker in some sense, at least then the residents of Oswestry will know that good things are in the offing, and we are in the process of going forward with this.
Councillor James Owen.
I know we're agreeing an asset list. I was just going to suggest there's an area on the corner of Windsor Road and Hark Road that is a newt pond that is very overgrown, and a lot of residents around there do complain about its management for many years. I feel like it is owned by Shropshire Council. It's a good place that can be somewhere to sort of promote biodiversity, as it already is somewhere that's promoting biodiversity. whether it's been maintained to actually allow anything to live in that pond is a question. But I would like that to sort of be asked whether that could be added to the list.
Unless anyone wishes to speak, oh, you may. Yep. I'm allowing you to, as long as you turn your mic on.
Yes, I know. The good counsel next to me has already pointed that out, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
The
you.
I've got no problem with looking at additional spaces. However, the one thing that you know I'm going to say, and it's not a family argument, is that it it should not slow the progress of the whole project down. I'm all in favour of taking on many green areas, but we have a list of areas. If it starts to get too big, and my fear is it will slow the whole process down. So I do want to see more, but let's not do too many and stop the process in its tracks.
Councillor Simmons.
Going on from what James has just said, we, when you were little, we used to live down by the Newt Pond, and I remember it opening, and it was a really thriving, beautiful place. We even had newts working their way up into our garage, so it was very, very sad to see it fall into disrepute. I appreciate what Councillor Mark Owen has said, but if there was any way of doing something to restore it, I'd certainly back it.
So, Councillor Kerr.
Just a question. What happens at the end of the 99 years? Do we have a right to extend? Does it automatically transfer back to Shropshire Council? What happens then?
So it depends on the terms of the lease and whether it's excluded from the Landlord and Tenancy Act. So we'll have to look at the detail. Council can express their view on what they want to see, and that could inform the discussions.
Both of you had your hands up at the exact same time. So, Kurt Walker. Kurt Walker.
I just follow on from the question, then I would like to request that Shropshire Council grants us the right to renew at the end of the 99 years. It sounds a long time, 99 years, but in 40, 50 years' time, when you're starting to develop a site and starting to put further things on, it starts to be, are we going to have the length of tenure of this site in the future? So it would be nice to have the ability, I don't know that's how that sits with Landlord and Tenant Act, but it would be nice to have the ability to extend beyond the 99 years.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm assuming that there'll be break clauses built into it and that there'll be a review period before you even get anywhere near the 99. So I'd hope that would be built into automatic.
Yeah, the next step, once we've agreed the asset list, because it says in the report, is just to have a look at the heads of terms. So I haven't seen those yet. So I know the estate team, to be fair to the estate team, the Shropshire Council have been extremely helpful. They've prepared that document. They're waiting for our consent to the funding, which I'm reading into that you'll be giving tonight. So yeah, I think there's a secondary piece, isn't there, where we bring the heads of terms back for you to review to make sure you're happy with them, because you can see a situation where, let's take a parcel of land, Broadlands Way, there's a massive electricity cable through there, and it says that the council is liable for its upkeep. I'm not saying it says that. You'd want to make that decision, hang on, that's too risky for us, we're not going to take that on. You have to have that ability to have those checks and balances. So you will get it back. I will feed this through to them to make sure it's picked up. With regard to the Windsor Road, Newpond, it hasn't come up in any discussion with anybody until this evening. So no officers, nobody's mentioned it, which is interesting in its own. I'm happy to, if members want me to, I can raise that with Shropshire Council officers. It doesn't have to be an absolute deadline, so we can do the 9. There's discussions about Gattaca which need to be resolved, and we can throw Windsor Road into that to avoid having to go back and change the. So I'll raise it with them, say we're interested, can we progress it if members are okay with that? But you know, it is an eyesore.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, so we're going to bring this to an end. is this to sum up your proposal, Councillor Markowitz? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In which case I propose that we do adopt the list to give Aaron a way forward. I also propose that the necessary fees for the transfer we take on. Part 3 is moot, isn't it? So I'll leave it at those two.
Okay, before we go to the vote, does anyone need it clarifying?
So I do. So,
Aaron?
so no, that's perfect. So, but to add in that we want to consider the terms of the lease, and we would like the option to renew, automatic right to renew, etc., and then to consider Windsor Road as part of the process as well, but not to delay the initial phase, if that's okay.
Do you have a seconder? Seconded by everyone. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 15A, reports from the Project Development Officer. A period product accessibility pilot project to consider, report TC/4417/26. Before I go to the floor, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just having a look at my notes, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. So the only point I make, I think, you can discuss and debate the detail, but what this does show is a little bit of a progressive agenda, and clearly shows that link between what young people are telling this council is important to them and the issues that they face, and this council actually doing something about it and being progressive in that way. It does make a recommendation. I think there's some debate about the right solution. However, there's a way forward. There's action being taken. It gives you a chance to pilot something, as well as continue to develop and support this project. So you've seen the letter from the member of the Youth Parliament, and you know the impact that this has on young people. It's a report brought forward from the Project Development Officer, who has been supporting the Youth Forum, and I'm on the record grateful for bringing this report forward.
Thank you, Aaron. I'll go to Councillor Radford first.
Thank you. I absolutely welcome this report and will be absolutely in favour, and it's in line with the period products provision requirement for schools and higher education. The report actually notes 1 in 10 people in period poverty, but if you look at the Action Aid, most up-to-date report suggests in 2023 alone, period poverty rose from 12% to 21% in a year, and that's in 2023 alone because of the cost of living. In the last 3 years, I don't think the cost of living has improved as far as I'm aware, and so even in 2023, 1 in 5 people that menstruated were having to decide whether they pay money for fuel and food or period products, let me get my words out, which is a shocking statistic and a shocking situation. I think we should be doing everything that we can to support this, and I think, if my memory serves me, at one of the youth partnership meetings, we talked about the potential of having a donation area in the council for period products that we could then offer in a way that would be suitable, with some advice from Corrie, and I would like to be able to kind of look at that with a bit more of a serious look, and I think I would also like to encourage businesses within the town to consider offering some period products in their what's the posh word for toilets?
Facilities.
Thank you. Washroom facilities is much posher than I am. Thank you. As a way of acknowledging the issue that we have, and a small but really vital way of supporting both young people and women in general. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 5 recommendations here. If council wish to support, or Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just looking at like the dispenser cost, would it not make more sense to just have them in baskets on shelves, save the money and buy extra products with that? As long as they're accessible in the cubicles, I don't understand the extra cost per dispenser.
It's all the management of that and somebody to do it, and it being in a public space as well. So yeah, this was recommended. There are options, and there's some accreditation behind this organisation as well, isn't it? As opposed to us buying them and putting them out. I think that's a little bit harder for us to be doing that. But if you want, the option you've got is to defer the recommendation, ask for more information. I'm struggling to give you any more than what's in front of you.
So is it an official, like branded dispenser then?
Yeah.
And is to take part, have you got to kind of use those, or can you just use any other options? Because it's not very clear on that. And from where I'm standing, it would make much more sense to have a small shelf, a little basket, and to use that money to provide more products longer term.
Yeah, so you're not paying for the dispenser, you're paying for the products within the dispenser. So there are a series of products, so it's a dispensing unit with products in there, and a range of products.
Councillor James.
The report does specifically say a dispenser has a cost of 209 ex-VAT.
Including approximately 2,000 supplies in there as well.
So is the breakdown just for because there was a breakdown of just the dispenser in the outline project costs on page 3.
Yes, so there is. There's a price of the package of 1,100 in there, and that's an outline of how that's broken down. So yeah, I suppose the point you're making: do we need a dispenser, or do we top it up regularly? I would say I haven't got necessarily the resource to be topping stuff up, all the expertise, or making sure that we've got the right products. I think I'm a little bit concerned about some of the detail around that. But if you want more clarity, I can't give you any more clarity. If you want it to come back, then you instruct me to do that.
Councillor Marco and then Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Owen. This is a proposal for a pilot, which is 12 months. In which case, would it make sense to go with the pilot to see how it is utilised? And then some of the nitty-gritty in terms of the potential savings and modifications with those savings can actually come at the end of the period, if you pardon the expression, at the end of the 12 months as part of the review.
Yeah, and just adding to that, so what we're also testing is we can't, so in the public toilets that we've got in Central Car Park and in Caiglas Park, we can't put baskets and so we have to have stuff stuck on the wall, properly dispensed in those, so we're also testing that as well. But I'm struggling to answer any more questions, so if you know, obviously if you're not in support of it.
Councillor Owen.
I think I'm happy to just propose that we go ahead with this pilot for 12 months as described, and after 12 months look at how it could be amended, or if we want to carry on and increase the spaces. But also...
Sorry.
Please adopt etiquette with your microphones.
Obviously, we're using the new initiatives this year, but it will have to be added to the budget going forward as a separate item.
So that is a proposal to proceed with the recommendations. Councillor Radford.
Can we add to that proposal, like we said a minute ago, that we set up a donation station within the Guildhall, which it can simply be a plastic box with a sign on the front that is entirely voluntary as to whether people would wish to donate or not, much as they do in Sainsbury's, but on a much smaller level.
Yeah, it's outside my area expertise, so I don't know whether, in terms of these sorts of products, whether that's okay, because you have no control over them. So the council accepting donations and then giving them out, I don't know what the risks associated with that, but I can look at it, I suppose, as a recommendation.
I'll go to councillors Wendy Owen, Dave Walker and Mark Owen, and then I want to bring this to a close.
I think with the suggestion of the donation, if it's just within the Guildhall, could anything donated be put in the Guildhall toilets in a bath? So those that they're not given out to people, they're used in the Guildhall or Paris Hall toilet.
I have some concerns about that. Because where it says that these are okay, and I have no control of that they're okay.
Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, that's the only concern I've got is how you police that storage of cash or whatever. But I think we basically accept the principle of doing this, but I'm sure we can vary the wording to allow you a bit of latitude to clarify some of these things without having to come back again.
Councillor, you wish to respond? Yes. Oh,
I believe it's to actually donate period products in a basket, not actual cash. So that's I think that's what
I would prefer cash. So just in terms of, again, I think you're asking me to go recommend something I don't know anything about. So perhaps what we look at, if you're happy to go forward like this, to consider the options, other options, including accepting donations and being able to then offer those out there. So, yeah.
Councillor Mark Owen, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kerr, Councillor Radford, and then no more questions. I want to go to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was purely going to point out that it's if these dispensers are quite specific to the products that come to fill them, then you won't be able to actually put other products in it. So for the pilot, I think we need to limit it to that. But I do have sympathy is the wrong word. I am supportive, thank you, of the idea at some point in the future of finding some way to allow donation in some form. But I think for this pilot, we have to limit ourselves to the actual the options that have been proposed.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kerr.
I suggest we just move ahead with the pilot as set out here. Meanwhile, in the pilot, we can then think about donations. We can think about baskets for products going forward, and then when we come at the end of the pilot, we can consider all that when we go beyond that time. So just trying to keep things simple. Obviously, the clerk's got some reservations about overcomplicating it.
Councillor Radford, and then the vote. All those in favour of adopting the recommendations? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 15B, Breathing New Life into Empty Properties Grant, Scheme Criteria and Process to consider report TC/4418/26.
So, in some ways, you are just launching this scheme. It was reviewed in March. You made no recommendations. But what it does do is set out this council's ongoing commitment to supporting businesses in the town and particularly reducing empty shops. What I will need to think about is some of the deadlines. We were going to align this grant scheme with the grants and donations approach that you're taking, so interviewing businesses as you would do with normal grants and donations. So the only proviso in here is can I adjust the dates depending on what you do later.
Okay, who wishes to? Councillor Kerr.
A couple of comments. It doesn't talk specifically about commercial property. I think our intention was always shops and commercial property, but it just talks about property, so I wonder whether we ought to specify commercial property. And the location, obviously town council area, and I think the scheme was always devised to be the town centre area, or but maybe I'm wrong, maybe we want to extend it beyond that, but I'm just querying as to whether we should restrict it to the town centre area. We've had one or two peripheral applications that start to think, well, is this... it was part of an initiative to try and get the town centre empty shops and re-let and the town centre more vibrant. So those are two questions I've put, I suppose.
Councillor Wall? Oh, sorry.
So,
Karen, then Councillor Wall.
as it was proposed as a question, apologies, Mr.
No, you're fine.
I should have waited. So, yeah, happy with the commercial premises. I suppose in terms of the other point, right, it was intended to be the town centre, but members have considered others, and rather than not, so there may be a good proposal that comes forward that you're not aware of or haven't thought about. There was one on Border Road, which perhaps wouldn't have been defined as a town centre, but was a good scheme. Members supported it because it was a key route into town. Would that have been defined in the town centre? I don't know. So what the criteria does is allow you to consider the options and then you make the decisions. But happy to include town centre in there if you wish.
Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Normally when I'm filling in these sort of things, there's normally a box on there where you self-declare whether you've had the grant or something in any other capacity before, and I think it's worth asking that over the period of time because it'll help you understand the dynamics of people coming in. It just makes you pose different questions almost when you're looking at the applicants and how you weight them and all those kind of things.
Thank you. Councillor Kirk?
So I would propose we talk about preferably in the town centre. We have had more applications than we've had funding in the past, and I think one of the criteria we could then use is in the town centre. It doesn't deny it to somebody outside, but it would be weighted less than someone in the town centre.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Owen?
Yeah, the only concern I have here is it's starting to become less of a grant and more of an annual service. I mean, I support the idea of trying to make sure that the empty buildings are actually brought back into use, but maybe we ought to consider for next year whether or not this is the way to do it, just as a means of reviewing it, because otherwise we will end up having an annual 25, 20,000, whatever it happens to be, and it will then be expected year on year on year on year. I think it does it good to have a review, even if the result of that review is to say, yep, it's a good way of doing it, let's carry on.
Yeah, and that's why we brought it forward to you in March for you to do that. So this is based on the recommendations that you made in, or lack of recommendations, I suppose, in a way, that you made in March. Yeah, absolutely. The problem that you have, I think a lot of feedback from businesses is that they would like support for regular repairs and maintenance type, like painting and window cleaning and what have you, which is important. But this is funded through capital funding, and those aren't capital items. There is a question, and then that raises a wider question for members. Can't be applied to this scheme because it's funded by capital, has to be capital investment. Yeah, you can consider them on their merits and come back again next year and think about the criteria.
Councillor Borman, then Councillor Owen, and then we'll sum up. Two things. One, which I was not going to say, but as the owner of a town centre business, I'd love it if businesses could have support with repainting and doing the front of their buildings. But that applies as much to people who are not new businesses. It applies to existing businesses, so I don't see why new businesses should get the treatment. To follow on from what David said, as well as a tick box to say whether you've had money before, I actually think there should be a criteria that if under any guise you've had funding from this before, you shouldn't be considered for it again. Anyone who's had this for a business and that business has closed up and then wants another one for another business, I think should not be considered, personally. Councillor Owen?
My concern that I just noted as well is that there's no, once it's been paid out, there's no, if they then close in 6 months' time, there isn't, I feel like it could be a good condition that they do stay open for a certain amount of time with a pro rata payback, because, but I feel like it would just discourage someone going, oh, I can do this, get 5,000 grand, and then go, oh, I can get another one. I think your proposal also sort of prevents that issue, so I just wanted to raise that concern personally.
So the programme isn't without risk, is it? You know, so you are showing you support for businesses, but it is a very small contribution to the cost of refurbishing an empty property, isn't it? You know, so it is as much a gesture showing you support as anything else. Yeah, I think the ability to claw back money is virtually impossible. And you know, there have been issues. I think including still your decisions, but being clear as part of that. So when we bring reports to you, this person has had money before, is the right thing to do, and then you can make that decision as opposed to then excluding them from applying. So it's still in your control. You can say our preference is for new stuff, but we need to be clear in the reports. This person had money to do this shop in the past, and this is what happened, and then you can make that decision, can't you?
Councillor Walker, and then we're going to the vote.
I think it adds value if you've got some kind of survey in the process, so 6 months down the line they are actually telling you how they've used it, because then that'll add value into everything you do after that.
We're going to the vote. Is it to sum up this? Is it in relation to it?
I think you'll agree with it.
Right. Okay.
It's not about giving the same person. We shouldn't give them the same premises twice. You're not actually excluded from applying for the same premises twice, I don't think, under this scheme. And I think you should be excluded, actually, from applying for the same premises twice.
Okay, then. So the resolution is to note this report and to adopt the feedback given.
Just I brought this to you in March for you to consider. You know, we prepared, ready for this, and now you're changing it. So just let's just. I need to be better at introducing the stuff to you and being clear. What we're doing is just 2 or 3 goes at things is a little bit difficult. But take that feedback. We do follow-ups, and we do follow-up reports for you. The survey stuff. So I've heard all the comments, and we'll build it into the process.
I'm conscious 2 more people want their hands up. Right.
I'm assuming that the proposal is to bring back things which identify previous recipients or properties. Yeah, it is not to exclude. It is to bring the data back, and then we bring that in as part of our deliberations.
So when you get an application, we obviously know who's applied in the past. So when you're considering it, the report will say. So we do a covering report. You get all the applications. You consider them all, so we don't exclude anything. So you know what's happened. We will be clear in the report. This is a first-time applicant. This property hasn't been done before. And then you can make that decision. I know that there is stuff around length of time, you know, between grants. It's all in your gift to decide.
I second that.
There is a line here that says Council asks to consider the report and summary above and confirm the criteria. So I move that we accept that sentence with the additional comments that we made to the Town Clerk tonight.
And I'm going to second that. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. I've got to keep up with it, haven't I? Item 16, report from the Operations Manager, Light Refreshment Licence, Kyglass Park, to consider report TC 420/26. I'll go to Aaron and then to Councillor Owen.
All I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, the Operations Manager has consulted with you on this one, you know, as chair of the Kyglass group. There is a need there. There's a proposal that's come forward. You've seen it. I'd recommend that, you know, you can, I'll leave it with you.
Okay, Councillor Owen?
Could I move that this moves to private session at the end of the agenda, as I feel it is in the commercial interest of the town council that it went out to tender previously. So if there's a risk that it is affecting our commercial interests to openly discuss our previous tender process.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Cliff? Yeah.
It's not a matter of our decision as whether it's in private agenda, it's a matter of whether it requires a disclosure of material which by law enables us to consider it private. We can't decide. It's a matter of law, and I'm not sure what material you're alluding to which would enable us to treat it as a private matter and exclude the press and public from it. We've got all the report in front of us now, it's already in the public domain, so I'm struggling to know what additional material you're going to bring which warrants taking it into a private, because it's not a decision, it's a matter of law that if it requires that information to be considered.
Councillor Mark Owen?
I took it that if we're going to discuss this, we're going to potentially discuss the finance of it. And if that comes out in public session, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it in public, but if it comes out with particular financial information, is that going to compromise our position?
No, so just to explain, apologies, so I should have explained the process a little bit better. I do apologise. So this went out to tender. There's a flat fee charged or suggested of £2,000 for both the ice cream and the light refreshments. These have been agreed historically by the council through the tender process, and nobody came forward. There was an instruction, so nobody came forward for the light refreshments coffee one. So there was an instruction from the management group to council endorsed that we go and seek, go back to previous providers and see if there's any interest out there. This one company's come forward based on the terms of the tender. That was already out there in the public domain. They put forward an offer which has been shared with the chair. So I'm struggling to see the commercial, because it's a flat fee, unless you want to discuss the business, then that's the risk, isn't it, if you start talking about the business that's coming forward. Yeah.
So could I clarify that the fee that was included in the original tender is included in there, because it wasn't in the report? It doesn't state that it meets the that's what I was confused about, is whether the amount of money we're getting for this.
It will be apportioned because they're not going in for the full year, so there'll be a slight apportionment, but that's the general figure that's been agreed.
Right, we're discussing it now. So, who wishes to start off? Councillor Borman.
I'm going to move that we agree as on the paper.
Okay. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 7, no, absolutely fine, no problems. Item 17, commissioning/grants and donations. A Music Mob, to consider a letter from Music Mob following the Town Council's offer. Appendix K attached. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Apologies, Mr. Mann. I'm interrupting you a little bit.
No, you carry on.
So just a bit of background to help members. So Music Mob came here, you interviewed and you've been giving grants to them for a number of years. You're very supportive of their work. See it as a key part of your youth, providing support for young people. At that point you said, well, rather than it coming from the grants and donations, let's say we'll support it. So I met with them as per the instruction, and they've given you some options of suitable contributions. I think it's either 4,000, 5,000 or 6,000. Obviously, everybody would be pleased with a larger amount is for you to consider. You'd gave £3,000 last year. That funded 11 pupils, so the information's there. So I think what you're asking to consider is whether you're going to provide funding to them and the amount. It will come out of the commissioning budget, because listening to members' feedback, he said, well, this is important, we're going to ask you to do this on our behalf. And, so I think based on that, there's a decision for you.
Thank you, Aaron. Who to speak first? Councillor James Owen?
So first to clarify, are we just discussing Music Mob first?
Yes.
So on this one, we funded 3,000. Are they saying that they wouldn't accept 3,000 because, or I'm assuming that they would?
Yeah, I'm assuming that they would as well, but I think they'd obviously like a little bit more.
They've in their letter they've listed a whole range of how many pupils each offer, whether it be 4, 5, or even 6,000, of how many pupils it would fund. So this is for us to determine. Councillor Owen.
So my only thing is, given we've got 10,000 budget, if we did then give what the recommendations are, or what we previously gave, that would only leave 4,400 left in that budget anyway, which vastly limits our options here to effectively be between offering what we did last year and offering 4,000. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that, so that was my...
Was that a proposal or not?
I would happily propose we give the 4,000 to 15, but I feel like the reason we can't give more is to stay within budget to allow the other commissioned work we want to do to stay within that budget.
Okay. Who else wishes to add anything? No. So yes.
I sort of get the implication from the letter they're almost asking us to commit to a year-on-year thing, not just a one-off. There's a sort of so are they saying that are they asking that we say, well, we'll give 4,000 a year for 3 years or something so that they can budget or whatever? Is that where they're pointing? I sort of read that letter like that, or I might be wrong.
So, yeah, and that's why we approached them, because you wanted to give regular contribution, but it is obviously subject to an annual review. So, you know, it is, they would like security with funding, and it's a similar arrangement as for the Sports Forum. There was a 3-year agreement, and with the Osprey Community First Responders, I think there's an open agreement with them, to be fair. So, yeah, I think that's what they'd like, but you can't. You know, it's obviously subject to annual review and the budget being available.
Councillor Walker?
And you can't commit a future council, so you can't really do more than 3 years anyway, can you, on that basis?
I suppose you can have a policy that is subject to review, isn't it? There's no guarantees.
So if no one else wishes to speak, we will propose, well, we will go with Councillor Redford.
Thank you. I know we have set up regular payments for Sports Forum and other places. I think it just feels slightly uncomfortable that when we ask for kind of grants and donations, we ask what other kind of sources of income you're having and where you're having it from. And this doesn't include that, and I appreciate why it doesn't include it, but they're asking for quite a lot of money, and I guess it feels uncomfortable to be asked for quite a lot of money without any discussion about where else they're getting money from. It's just a slightly different approach than grants and donations, isn't it? But it feels uncomfortable without that kind of governance and that transparency.
So you cannot obviously ask, so you know, feel in the mood, it's entirely up to members. You can ask for regular reports. This is a local charity, so there's reports. You can ask for reports back. I'm doing this again, apologies if it seems being critical. You know, when you had them here, you had an enthusiastic, we want to support you, and you've given me instruction to go ahead and doing it, and then there's a little bit of perhaps reconsidering it, which makes it quite difficult, and we may have to reconsider our approach with that. Perhaps as a way forward, you offer them the 4,000 in the first instance and ask them to meet for future years and ask for information.
So you don't wish to speak anymore? Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I think it's like it's the way that it's worded, and obviously it would be good to know that they've got other source of income and that the town council wasn't the sole funding source. But yeah, I would be interested to see if they've got other funding sources. So I would query that in future.
It costs a lot more than that to run the organisation.
Councillor Markoway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Was there a seconder for that proposal, first of all? In which case I'm happy to second it. I think the enthusiasm that the clerk alluded to, it's a measure of my age that I can't remember the enthusiasm, even though I do support what they do. And now he's reminded me of that. I can remember the fact that I did actually support them at that time, so I'm happy to second and wait for the reviews, as the clerk has said, we will have.
Councillor James Owen.
With the seconder's permission, I would just like to amend to commission for this year and ask them to bring up the information that Councillor Radford did ask for prior to commissioning anything for the next few years.
So we'll ask for a full report at the end of this financial year, setting out their accounts, where they get the information from. So it provides you with some reassurance, something like that.
Councillor Kerr, and then we're going to the vote.
The first line of the letters talks about the town council's offer to provide us with some regular annual funding. And I think probably we need to be specific about that and say, yes, we are, presumably are committed to some regular annual funding, but that may not be 4,000. And I think we probably ought to say that the amount given this year does not set a precedent for what we will consider future years. We've got lots of calls on our limited sums, and we have to think about the needs of the whole town. So it not saying it won't be, but I'm not saying it will definitely be that same amount. We will have to review it each year to see whether demands are. That's my amendment.
Firstly, Councillor Johnson, as proposer, do you wish to accept the amendment? All right, proposer, do either of you wish to accept? Through the chair, please. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Duncan had said, that there's quite a few figures floating around in this, and it looks to have jumped from previously funded 3,000, and then it's suggested that between 5,000 and 6,000 might be an appropriate amount. So it's the way that it's worded. Is that what they're expecting? Because that's almost, yeah, that's doubled.
Okay. Does the amendment have a second?
No, I just wanted to hear what others had to say about the amendment before just accepting it blindly. But I am happy to accept the amendment.
Right. Councillor Barman?
All I was going to say is their accounts are actually available online on the Charity Commission, because I've got the agenda for another body I sit on. I've just clicked on the link so I can see them. They basically get funding of about this level from a number of organisations, adding up to the total. I don't see this as an unreasonable level. I've had this discussion in that other body as well. I mean, my personal view is that we sign up for the 4,000 per year, subject to review, rather than putting a cap on it for a year. If after a year we review and go, oh my God, you squandered it all, we can squash it. But, I think their desire is to have some form of reassurance on what's happening going forward.
Thank you. The amendment has been accepted by the proposer.
So let's be clear, because there's been a little bit of discussion, so I'm clear for the minutes because I have to write to them. So let's be clear. So my understanding is that the council are supportive of providing regular funding in principle, but we'll need to consider the amount annually. They'll support the £4,000 for 26-27, but we'll request the 27. We'll consider 27.8 or future year payments in May next year, but we will require full reports and additional information.
All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. So item 17B, Oslo Street Sports Forum. Councillor asked to consider their award, which is our. There's no. Yeah. Thank you. Who wishes to? Councillor Owen.
I think the point being sort of alluded to is they spent 2,200 last year. We gave them 3,000. I don't think we should cap what they could offer because it seems to be out on a yearly basis. There could be more people being involved or they could get more people involved. So we shouldn't then limit what they could do to what they did last year if they're growing. Therefore, I would propose that we stick with the 3,000 for another year. And due to the fact that we're doing commissioning for the rest of the 3 years.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Johnson. Does anyone wish to add anything? No? All those in favour? Oh. I'm ruling that we accept that and move on. Item 17C, Oslo Street Community First Responders, to consider their award for 26-27, which sees up to 1,000 per annum being awarded to Oslo Street First Responders. Councillor James Owen.
Can I propose that we carry on with the 1,000 for the 3 years, and I'm happy to propose that.
Seconded. So any second by Councillor Simmons. Any questions? Councillor Redford.
In the way of being fair and transparent, it feels like each one of these should provide a full transparent report every year if we are proposing these ongoing payments. So I'm going to propose that we should also add that they provide a full breakdown as well.
Happy?
Sandra's nodding her head furiously at the back there. We do ask for regular reports, and we do present them to council. So the Sports Forum one came in March. Yes, I remember. We haven't heard from the community first responders. They're a purely voluntary organisation. Perhaps haven't picked up emails. So what we'll ask for is for the report to be received before we allocate the funding for next year, if that's okay. Okay with that, Mr. Mayor?
Moved, seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 18, Plasfinnan Millennium Green and Plasfinnan. For the purposes of the minutes, Councillor Kerr is leaving the room. To note and consider a letter from the trustees, Appendix L. Anything to add before I go to the floor?
So no, the letter is as it is. I hope you don't ask me too many questions because I won't be able to answer them. I think what you did hear during the public session from Ollie, I nearly called her Councillor Rose, from Ollie, was that they'd asked you to meet with them to discuss, I think, is what the ask was, what I heard. So just build that into your thought processes.
Councillor Elmert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'm in principle in favour of supporting this letter. It seems to me to be entirely within the council's stated aim of taking green spaces under its control and its management. But I do have some concerns. Firstly, it seems to be difficult, if not virtually impossible, to get independent trustees, and the local residents don't seem to be interested. I'm concerned that with this arrangement, in the medium to long term, the only active trustees will be the town council nominees. Secondly, I'm somewhat concerned at the possible expense of future upkeep with the town council managing the site, and that all seems to me like responsibility without ownership. For the long-term protection of the land and the council involvement, I'd like to suggest that Ollie and Duncan, or the current trustees, consider looking at transferring the assets of the Plasfinnan charities to the Kai Glass charity. There is guidance on the Charity Commission website about transferring all of a charity's assets to another charity, usually before closing. And I quote, For example, when a charity merges with another charity, changes its structure, or voluntarily closes, you can transfer the assets. And they go on to say you can transfer your charity's assets to another charity if this furthers your charity's purposes. And the charitable objects of the various charities are then Plasfannon Community Trust says, Field Trust says, to provide and maintain an open space to be known as Plasfannon Community Field, a trust for the benefit of the inhabitants and to be used forever as an area of informal recreation, play or other leisure time occupations, a meeting area or place of community events, and for any other lawful purpose consistent with these trusts and for the general benefit of the community. The Plasfannon Millennial Green Trust states, the trustees shall hold the trust fund and its income, although there doesn't seem to be any money now, upon trust to apply them to the provision of the property, and shall accordingly hold any property to provide and maintain an open space to be known as Plasfannon Millennial Green for the benefit of the inhabitants and to be used forever as an area of informal recreation, play or other leisure time occupations, a meeting area or place of community events, and for any other lawful purpose consistent with these trusts and for the general benefit of the community. For those of you who aren't aware, Kye-Glass Charitable Objects says the maintenance and upkeep of the property known as Kye-Glass Park or such land acquired for use as a recreation ground for the benefit of the inhabitants of the town of Oswestry. It seems to me to be entirely appropriate for the charity assets to come together under Kye-Glass. However, this will need approval from all three charities and from the Town Council, and if acceptable, clarification is needed to confirm a viable route forward for this. Their letter states at the end, up till now, legal advice for the
Councillor Elmer, can you...
I've got one
sum up?
sentence left.
Thank you.
Up till now, legal advice to the trust has been provided on a pro bono basis by a local solicitor. However, he is now retiring and this benefit is unlikely to continue in the future, and I would ask if it's possible that that solicitor, as a swan song, could have a look at the possibility of this. Thank you.
So what do you want me to say?
Can you send us a copy?
So I suppose the implications in there, so the Town Council is the sole trustee or corporate trustee of Kye-Glass Charity. It would then accept responsibility for the management and maintenance of this parcel of land, is the implication. So either way there's a financial burden for the council to take on the work, which we don't know, do we? So that's doable. You'd have to get the charity, as you say, Kye-Glass Charity to agree, and transfer the assets across it. So all that's doable. So, but what are you asking me to do?
Councillor Marco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as Councillor Elmett says, I think we're all hopefully of the mind that we want to see the green spaces continued in the town and looked after in the town. This doesn't come under the remit of the Shropshire Council transfer of assets because it's a charity, so we can't bring it under the funding arrangements that we're looking for, and therefore we won't be delaying that part, so I'm happy. But it seems like a sensible approach to actually try and bring it under an umbrella which we already have experience with, the Kye-Glass Charity. So I would certainly support any kind of proposition that the three charities be asked to meet and talk the thing through as a potential means forward to making sure that these green spaces are looked after. It will, of course, as the clerk has said, come forward at some point to the nitty-gritty of how much it's likely to cost us. But that presumably will come out as part of the discussion, and the fact-finding information, if you like, when the charities are talking. Am I correct with that, I think?
Yeah, I suppose it would need to, wouldn't it, as part of that. So what I wasn't clear when I was asking the question is, are you accepting the ownership? So what you've been asked to do is accept the management responsibilities for those almost immediately, isn't it? So are you saying to me that you're willing to have a discussion about that but you want to talk about the structure with the trustees initially, or are you saying to me we're happy to start managing, cutting the grass and managing these spaces? So that's the answer I need from you.
Councillor Mark Owen, then Councillor Elmet, then Councillor Walker.
I would like to know how much it's costing them at the moment to do the job, because unless you know that, how much it's likely to cost, you haven't got a way of actually approaching the Kai Glass charity to say, well, it's going to be costing you this much, and therefore it'll come to the town.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the town council bankroll is a wrong word, but funds all the work associated with Kai Glass Park, so you'd be doing the same for this. So the running costs aren't the issue, I would say. I think the issue becomes, as this letter suggests, that there's a major investment needed, which you don't know the amount. Because there's water and decking and ponds. So I've just been, that sounds as though I'm being negative. I'm absolutely not. I just need to be clear what you're instructing officers to do at this point.
Councillor Elmet.
Just to respond to some of that, first of all, there is no money available from their perspective because the trust virtually run out of money. Currently, it's maintained by Shropshire as far as they're aware, because there seems to be some vague agreement. Originally, the land came from Shropshire, and Shropshire seem to be maintaining it without even knowing that they have some measure of involvement. My suggestion at the moment is, firstly, I would like them. I think the transfer is a practical approach, but for it to happen, it needs to be investigated, and particularly, I think, from a legal point of view. And I don't particularly want us to take that cost on if we can avoid it. So my initial question is, can their pro bono solicitor look at the feasibility of being able to achieve it? I think it's possible, but I'm not a lawyer. The question of whether we wish to take it on is a general question that I think I'm open to the council deciding as to whether we are going to do this, because it is a bit like, if we take this on, we pick up the management costs, whether we like it or not, whether it becomes part of us as our charity or not, we end up running those costs. And I worry then as well about the additional risk of, well, who's insured for this? Who's insured for someone falling in the water? Where does all that go? And so there needs to be some clarification on it as well. So I guess my fundamental suggestion is, first of all, I'm asking the question, can they, through their solicitor, find out the legal possibility? And maybe they need a discussion first. Sorry about that, but maybe they need to think that this is worth doing. And then I think my next suggestion is, I would then like our new open spaces manager to review what we're being asked in order to see what the potential cost is going to be as a long term. So not just the maintenance of it, but these particular issues of securing the site from risk for people. And to get costs associated with it. And it seems to me, again, because of our time scale, so I'm pushing it down the track a bit, but I think it needs looking at in a bit more detail to be clear about some of it.
Councillor Walker and Councillor James Owen.
It's okay. I was kind of poised to not press it and then press it. I think it's something that's got to be taken away, and collectively they've all got to talk about it, because essentially any of the separate groups of trustees could take a different view to the other trustees and kill it stone dead anyway. But certainly if it's taken away and you explore the legal stuff with the solicitor has been expressed, and then you can then talk about whether there are opportunities around all of that, and then we can consider it then as a council, whether there's what the cost is to us and what the opportunities are and so on. But it's premature to talk about all of that.
Councillor James Owen.
I've sort of been swayed by what Councillor Walker has just said. My concern that I would raise would be that the risk is whoever is currently owning it sees it as too high a risk to currently keep it open as an open space, and I don't know what the law says around whether it has to be kept open and whether there's rights of way across it, and therefore the risk is that it then closes down to the public, and that won't be a sort of like, I know that residents in the area might not want to get involved, but that's not something they do want to see either. And therefore, while it's sort of kicking down the road, we do need to sort of do this at some speed to avoid the risk that it just becomes closed, overgrown, and turns into what's now on Windsor Road. So,
just this again, it feels like I'm being really negative this evening. I do apologise, but it is my responsibility to, you know, to tell you about the resources that you got available and how we're stretching them. Taking on 9 public open spaces is a significant task in its own right. With taking on this as a liability, there's no budget associated with this as well. So you know, I have to advise you of that whole position. I'm hearing that you'd like to take it. Is what I'm hearing. That there's a bit of a responsibility and some concern if it does close or can't be opened, whatever the conversation. But you know that there is only a finite resource within the officer group to deliver everything that you want to deliver.
Councillor Barman, and then I want to proceed to the vote because time is.
I think the one important bit, based on what Richard said, is I wouldn't like us to take on any responsibility for maintenance or costs unless that transfer happens of the charity ownership, you know, because I don't want risks and costs and taxes being paid without representation. You know, I think we have to have it merged into Kai Glass, or we don't do anything. I don't think we just take on a responsibility without taking on some form of ownership.
So, before you go to the vote, so what I'm hearing, perhaps the motion is that to the trustees, the council are willing to discuss the opportunity with you. The option that they'd like to talk in detail is about considering the transfer to Caglass Charity, including the asset. So essentially what you're saying is that their proposal isn't one that you want to consider. That there needs to be some further discussion around this, but we would like your solicitor to explore this. And if that's not possible, then you might have to consider the other option. And then when the open spaces manager arrives, and that's probably going to be July, August time perhaps, at some point in their list of things to do, that you will ask them to investigate the initial investment needed and to come back with a report to tell you it's going to cost you 100 grand, 50 grand, these are the risks, etc. Is sort of my broad understanding of what you want to get to. If you want to move quicker, which members may want to do, then the option is to commission somebody else to do that work, isn't it? To do that assessment. So you get a landscape expert to come in and say, to review it for you, but you'll obviously have to pay for that. So those are the options as I see it.
Councillor Walker, and then the vote.
I know you're reluctant, but I'm just in terms of what you've said, the first step is to get everybody to talk. And if it breaks down then you're not going, all these rabbit holes close off. So that's all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's clear steps. I get that.
So if everyone understands what we're voting on, so all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Can we bring Councillor Kerr back in? We've got a lot to get through. Item 19, notices of motion. 19A, notice of motion in the name of myself and Councillor Mark Owen. I think we all know what it's about. I hope everyone's had a chance to read it. Do you wish to add anything, Councillor Owen?
As you say, it's fairly self-explanatory. It's just celebrating the various saints of the parts of the UK.
Great. Anyone wish to add anything? Councillor Kerr?
I probably won't be supporting this. I do worry that we're being a bit flag-obsessed in this country, but I do think if you're going to celebrate anything, I think somebody told me that 1 in 10 children coming into marches are now Bulgarian. And maybe you want to celebrate and make them feel at home. There are other communities living here who might like to see their national flag. I do wonder if we spend money on the flags themselves, the Scottish saltire, people will say, well, what's that about? What is the relevance of that when we know that there are other communities more numerous living here? So, and also, it's a workload for the clerk. Somebody's got to go up on the roof and keep changing these flags, and maybe the clerk doesn't do it. Maybe somebody else does it. But it all adds to the workload, doesn't it?
I'll do it.
I think health and safety might preclude a councillor from being up on the roof. You could fall off, Mayor. We can't have that. Anyway, so I won't be supporting it.
Anyone else wish to add anything? Councillor Owen?
I think it's just, while I understand the premise of being, I can't remember the flag word that you used, but I think it's also important that at a time where there is quite a lot of division, that you also celebrate that the United Kingdom is a union that's lasted 300 years, and all 4 nations are sort of together. And I think, especially given how local elections, etc., have gone, and how close we are to the border, I'd be quite sad for Wales to go myself. So I'd rather celebrate that we are together with them. But that's just my personal opinion on this matter.
Okay. Anyone else wish to add anything? Councillor Owen?
Should this get through, can it please be the Welsh Dragon?
Well, I suppose in a way, this actually leaves council to debate on which one. Councillor James Owen?
Can it be the Welsh Dragon, please? Thanks.
Are you
Can I
proposing
propose?
that as an amendment?
Yes.
You're seconding it as an amendment. Do you accept the amendment? I accept the amendment as well. So all those in favour of the amendment? Against? Abstentions? So the amendment becomes a substantive motion, same motion as before, except it's the Welsh Dragon rather than St David's Cross. All those in favour? Against? Abstention? Carried. Thank you. 19B, notice of motion in the name of Councillor James Owen.
Thank you. I think a lot of residents of Cavan Lane have...
For the purposes of meeting, Councillor Walker's leading the room.
Yes, I do. A lot of residents of Cavan Lane for a while have raised the sort of peculiar paintings that were made on the road rather than a crossing, so I did dig into it for them. There were various issues that were raised around effectively the grant that did the amendment to the changes to Unicorn Park couldn't also fund a crossing on the other side, but I feel like it is an area which does suffer from parking being on the road, etc., that makes it difficult for pedestrians to cross. In the LC Whip, it is identified as one of the walking and cycling routes from east to sort of the town centre, and currently it's effectively just a road barrier between a public footpath in the woods and the Unicorn Park. Therefore, this is a motion to allow the first steps to take place that are needed to say whether this can or cannot happen in the future. If the result is no, then that is also a result for the people of Cavan Lane who just know that this isn't possible, and we'll have to look at other sort of adaptations to make sure the LC Whip that was proposed is actually actionable, as it clearly can't be in this form.
Okay, and do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wendy Owen. Who wishes to speak? If no one wishes to speak, then we proceed to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item C, notice of motion in the name of Councillor Duncan Kerr.
Shall I bring my guitar up? Yes, I think it's fairly obvious what it's about. I think it's important that we celebrate people who are born in Oswestry. For some bizarre reason, many people don't seem to know that Ian Hunter was born here. He did move at a fairly young age, but then Wilfred Owen did as well. So I think it's time we celebrated him, and the idea is to try and do a day with a plaque. I've spoken to the people who now live in the house, and they were delighted to know that they live in this famous house. And it's it's York Street, so it's an interesting place to come from. I've shown you a plaque. I think if the town council viewers, as the mayor, could unveil a plaque there, and I think there are other legends of Oswestry that we can follow on with. I can think of a few more who have made it, internationally famous, having been born in this town. And I think, who are you laughing at? Pardon? Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh,
I was thinking of Jesse Armstrong.
Apologies, we need to bring Councillor Walker
Oh,
back
no, I'd have to say it all over again.
I've ruined it. That's it.
So the only thing is that the original one talked about a date which is not achievable for various reasons. So we have yet to set a date for it. So Ideally, it'll be on a Saturday. I have got the rights to show a film, and I'm trying to get Mona to actually show that film, which is a documentary of the life of Mott the Hoople. Duncan will be there, I'm sure, with your ex-girlfriend you were telling me about. Never mind.
Okay, unless... Do you have a seconder, Councillor Kerr? Are you seconding? Sorry? Go ahead.
I think it needs a seconder.
It does need a seconder. I mean, if no one else wishes to, I'll second it. So, Councillor Mike? Councillor
I was simply going to say, I think there are other plaques of a similar nature, and all I would ask is that they look in the same vein. So as long as it is the same design, then I'm happy to support the motion.
One reason for getting the town council to procure it rather than come along with my own plaque. You're right, there's one for Dame
Steph Shirley.
Thank you very much. And we procured that one, I believe, so we can procure one from a similar source. Yes, that is absolutely right. And that's, I mean, I hope you like the idea of Legends of Oswestry and that we can continue this and other people can come forward with other proposals. I have to say, sorry, boring you, that this was quite an event when Ross on Y did a little plaque unveiling for the two other members of the band the last year. They had hundreds of people there, so don't underestimate how much interest there is from very old people like me who like this sort of stuff.
We're going to go to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. And now item 20, report from the finance officer, sundry creditors. Aaron? Okay. Anyone wish to add anything? Councillor James Owen?
Just move we adopt.
Move on block? Yep, I seconded. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. Item 21, D-Pave.
Apologies. So the reason I bring this back, members have considered this item before, so I'm repeating what I said earlier. I'm not asking you to reconsider it, but so you approved option 1, option 2 previously. D-Pave have said we've got plenty of money. Option 3 is the one that we really like to do. We'd really like to do that. We've got the funding to do it. It's probably a little bit different to what you've approved before, so I just need to bring it back for you to check. Fairly exciting proposition, I think, but I do just need you to say yes or no.
You seconded. Anyone wish to speak? Councillor James Owen.
My only concern is it will create a walk-through from not on the path onto the car park. I feel like we can't stop that, and I feel like it is a good project, but it's just a concern that I think might then be raised when there's just a muddy path of people who've walked up in the winter. So that's just why I think the fence is currently there.
Councillor Mark Owen.
I share the concern. However, I think in the report, do they say they're going to be using shrubbery to try and prevent that? I'm not sure, but that is a concern certainly, but it wouldn't be enough for me to vote against it.
I'll raise this with the designers. So thank you for I haven't picked that up.
Okay. So we've got a proposal from Councillor Borman to go with option 3. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 22, Town Clerk's appraisal. To note that the Town Clerk's appraisal was undertaken by the Mayor, the former Mayor, Councillor Rosie Radford and Councillor Duncan Kerr, and will be reported to the HR panel in the next meetings. All those in favour? Thank you. Before we go back to item 8, I'm conscious that we've only got 10 minutes before the standing orders compel us to stop the meeting. So unless anyone moves, by 9:30 we will have to bring the meeting to a close and the status quo or anything gets moved over to the next one. So item 8 to transact all such business. A, appointment of committee to appoint the planning committee all members. Councillor James Owen.
So apologies, given that with what you said, I do need to highlight the urgency around the item in private session. I do need you to consider that this evening, because it is key to other decisions that you've made. So, however, you can exclude the public and press at this point and then come back to that item if you so wish. But I'd just be mindful that I do need a decision on that this evening, however you wish to proceed.
Right, I'm deciding we're going to exclude the public and press to discuss this item due to the urgency of it. Councillor Wendy Owen.
Because I need to leave for that, the item for the private session, are we going to, will I know that we're continuing, or do I wait outside ad infinitum?
Well,
It'll either be all of us or you.
Private, yeah. All those in favour of excluding the public? Thank you. Right, is there any public online?
So, yeah, can you stop the recording, Sandra? I'm conscious